All I got to say is holy Schoonmaker. Welcome back to EDFF. I'm Ding, and we've got an important show for you tonight. We're going to talk about some waiver acquisitions to target or avoid this week, and that could be critical to get you in the playoffs. There are count them, 6 teams on the bye this week, so it's a good bet you need to go to the wire and grab a replacement. All right, we'll start off with injuries as always. Ferguson, he's got a concussion. He probably won't play. Bring in the Schoonmaker. Cooper Rush, he's going to start week 12. Purdy, he's got a sore shoulder. Kittle is close to playing. He should probably play this week. Gabe Davis is out for the season. Sanders is out for the season. Tajay Spears is in concussion protocol. And Elijah Moore and Njoku were both limited. Not a whole lot going on this week, all right? That's a good thing, actually. Now, remember, there's a lot going on normally. So if you don't have the time to monitor all these guys, that's what I do. Make it easy on yourself. Follow me on X. You'll get the updates as soon as I do. Time to get on the waiver options. 6 teams on the bye this week are Falcons, Bills, Bengals, Jaguars, Saints, and Jets. And it's thin on the waiver wire, folks. In fact, some of these names you've heard me say before. So hopefully you picked them up a week or 2 ago after I've talked about them. All right, let's start off at quarterback. My number 1 is Drake May. He's 14% owned. He's at Miami. It's a tough road, but he's seen the field very well. He's got some rushing ability. It gives him a legit chance at about 25 points PPR. You could see 1 to 2 touchdowns throwing and 1 on the ground. Second quarterback is Will Levis. He's 9% owned. I just threw up in my mouth right now. But it's a decent matchup against Houston, who gave Cooper Rush 400 yards passing and a touchdown. And Levis is throwing the ball a lot since they've been having trouble with the run game. He's going to be behind. Remember, it's a thin week. There's not a whole lot going on. The last one is Cooper Rush. He's 4% owned. He's going to be going up against Washington. He threw 55 times last week. They can't run the ball. They'll probably be behind, and they're going to have to throw. So there's a whole lot of opportunity there. I want to say one more thing about quarterbacks. Winston, he's probably out there. He's 12% owned. It's a horrible matchup against Pittsburgh. I think you should avoid it. There's better options out there. All right, at running back, number 1, and remember, it's thin, people. Rashawn Johnson. He's 8% owned. He's at home to Minnesota, who's tough against the run. If Swift continues to struggle, Johnson can see a similar workload that he did last week. 10 touches, a couple of catches, maybe a chance at a touchdown. It's not great. I'm not going to lie. All right, the second running back is Trey Benson. He's 22% owned. He's seeing an uptick in touches the last couple of games. Maybe Connor was getting winded. They are coming off the bye, though, so if everybody's healthy, maybe it'll be back to him only seeing like 6 to 8. Again, it's thin this week. And then the last one is Justice Hill. He's 18% owned. Going up against the Chargers, and you know they are tough against the run. Hopefully, they'll design a couple of screen plays to get him out in the open, maybe get him a couple of points PPR that get you 8 or 9 points PPR, something that makes him semi-relevant. But again, you need a running back, and there's not a whole lot out there. All right, at wide receiver, we'll start off with Noah Brown. He's 10% owned. He's at home with the Cowboys. He's still a wide receiver too. McLaurin's obviously the alpha there. But McLaurin's probably going to draw digs in coverage, which means Brown is going to be up against a weaker corner. And I think there's a good chance here that Noah Brown gets 5 to 6 targets, maybe 4 catches, 50 yards. Maybe he gets a lucky touchdown. I don't know. He's still the wide receiver too. And when you're looking at the waiver wire, you see a guy who starts. Yeah, you want to go get him. All right, the second wide receiver is Akine. He's 4% owned. They're at Houston. They gave up a lot of passing yards. You saw what Rush did to him. He scored in 5 of the last 6 games. That's worth a flyer. I mean, I know last week the 98-yard touchdown, total fluke, but 5 out of the last 6 games, the guy's got a touchdown. And it's week 12 and you need somebody. Take a shot at it. All right, the last wide receiver is Kendrick Bourne. He's 1% owned. He goes from sitting on the bench to coming in, catching 5 for 5 and a touchdown. Now he's going up against Miami. Could be a tough sled here. May's looking at him, though. May trusts him from last week. I mean, he caught a really tough catch in the end zone, contested, had a lot of heat on it, and he grabbed it. So it's worth a flyer, right? I mean, there's nothing else out there. There really isn't. Okay, moving on to tight end. The number 1 guy out there is Disley, and we've been talking about him for a couple of weeks now. He's like the number 2 receiver on the Chargers. He's 24% owned. He's still out there. I mean, I've been hyping him for weeks. Hopefully you grabbed him. If you didn't, he still might be out there. He's a huge target. and worthy of a possible touchdown, 4 to 6 targets. No brainer here. Number 2, if Disley's not out there, go get the Schoonmaker. 0% owned. Ferguson is likely not going to play. When Ferguson went out, Schoonmaker got 10 targets. Whoa. All right. That's the kind of opportunity you want on a bye week. Ferguson, he'll probably come back week 13, but Schoonmaker, go get the guy. Last, Theo Johnson. I've talked about him before. He's 1% owned. Now that Danny DeVito, I know his first name isn't Danny, but with DeVito coming in at quarterback, he's going to need a solid tight end he can get the ball to. He's good for 5 to 6 targets, 50 yards, hopefully a touchdown. I mean, don't put too much faith in him, but he's been steadily seeing targets, and he's a good catcher. All right, last, I'm going to give you one more tight end, Brock Wright. Now, I know I talked about last week, he's good for a couple of targets, possibly a touchdown. He gave you a touchdown. That's good, Again, it's a bye week. It's thin. If Laporta doesn't play this week, you could grab Brock Wright. Temper your expectations. He's probably not going to get a touchdown, but you never know. He could. Good for a couple of targets. All right, for defenses, the number one out there is probably Washington. They're 22% owned. They're hosting Dallas. I don't need to say anything else here. It's Dallas. The number 2 defense is New England. Now, that's going to come as a shock. They're 3% owned out there. They're playing at Miami. They played them tough earlier this year. It was like a 10 to 15 game. It was really low scoring. They've got a sneaky good defense, all right? They have a chance to be viable. I mean, I don't think it's going to be that low scoring, but, there's still an opportunity there. The last defense out there, keep in mind it's thin, is Dallas. They're 30% owned. They're going up against Washington. They can generate sacks. They still got Micah Parsons. They can turn the ball over. Daniels has been playing a little bit off lately, so I'd say it's a solid bet for 3 to 5 sacks and a turnover. I mean, there's not much else you can ask for there. Now, looking ahead, week 13, there are no teams on the bye. But week 14, there are another 6 teams on the bye. Good job, NFL. Those teams are Ravens, Broncos, Texans, Colts, Patriots, and Commanders. So if you can pick up a waiver wire this week and you have the bench stash that'll help you for week 14, that's huge. And then if it carries you into the playoffs, legendary. Now, before we sign off, I want to give a shout out to our men and women in uniform who protect the freedoms we hold dear. Thank you for your service and sacrifice. And that'll do it for tonight. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe and follow us on X, YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you can stay up to date on our latest content. And until then, remember, established dominance isn't just a catchphrase, it's a commitment. Are you ready?